Hi guys, welcome back to sweltering hot South Carolina here in Cooper River Boatyard. This week it's not going to get as hot as last week, but we're still going to be sweating because we're going to undertake the somewhat nerve-wracking task of dropping the keel on this Fountaine Pajot 44. I am 99% sure this is going to be a YouTube first. I searched high and low to see if I could find any tricks for what we're about to do here, but I found nothing. So hopefully if you need to do the same, you can learn from what we did right and also what we did wrong. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. Why are we dropping this keel? Well, in our particular case here, there was a bunch of water trapped inside of the keel. So even though there is no visible damage anywhere on the keel, there's a leak somewhere. Last week we drilled a bunch of holes and a surprisingly large amount of water came pouring out. I expect to find some very low density foam or possibly some voids inside of the keel. That's the only way I can explain the amount of water that came pouring out. But if we look at the edges of the keel along the middle of it, there are no visible signs of like weeping or any kind of a leak that would allow water in. So that has us thinking that the leak into the keel could possibly be hiding up inside of the pocket. The keels on many modern catamarans are sacrificial, meaning they're not a part of the hull. So if you take a closer look up along the seam of the hull and this keel, you can see that there's a pocket up there. The keel is adhered into that pocket. There are no keel bolts or any other mechanical fasteners. It's just adhesive. If we had any kind of indications that the leak were on the outside of the keel, like weeping along the seam in the middle of the keel, for instance, I wouldn't necessarily bother dropping the keel. You could cut it open from the side, dig out all the foam, re-foam and re-glass with the keel in place. That would be a lot easier, but because we have a suspicion that the leak might be on top, if we just cut open the sides and re-foamed, then all of that work would be wasted in case the leak is indeed up on top. So our only 100% guarantee of making a proper repair here is to drop the keel. Last week we had a delightful day of digging out the caulking around the keel and hull joint here. With that out of the way, we can now access the adhesive that's actually holding the keel in place. To avoid having the keel drop all the way down once it lets go, we stacked some pieces of wood underneath it, leaving a small gap between the wood and the keel so that we can tell once the keel starts getting loose. Before we started to remove the keel, I made sure we can put it back exactly where it was originally by marking the forward and the aft position, as well as the height and the angle relative to the hull. We then set to work trying to cut out the adhesive holding the keel in place. We tried the least aggressive solution we could think of first, little handles with hacksaw blades. Those turned out to be completely useless, and we quickly resorted to using a sawzall. Even with the sawzall, cutting the adhesive is in no way a quick job, in part because we had never done it before, so we went slow to be careful, but also because there are areas where there just isn't enough of a gap to leave room for the blade. In those areas, we attempted to use some wedges to open up the gap.
Put enough leverage on here to open it up even more.
Turns out wooden wedges are much easier to get to bite than the hard plastic felling wedges we had. After about 7 hours of sawing, we finally saw some wiggling and the keel dropped noticeably, especially in the back. At that point, we were pretty sure the weight of the keel would pull free whatever little remnants of adhesive were still holding it in place. We quickly built a little brace to prevent the keel from falling to either side. The keel does have a nice flat bottom to sit on, and I don't suspect it would necessarily fall over, but at the same time we don't know how much water is still trapped inside, so we have no idea how heavy the keel is. Last night, the last bit of adhesive up here on the front finally let go, and we decided to leave the keel like this so we could pick up a little bit more wood and build a brace for the forward part of the keel too. We've been using these little bottle jacks here to slowly lower the keel in a controlled fashion, and that's worked out really well. But there is definitely going to be an interesting challenge in getting the keel back in place. Right now we have the luxury of time, but once it comes time to smush the keel back in place and we've applied adhesive up here, the clock is going to be ticking. So we're going to have to be able to get it back up in a timely fashion. That is going to be a fun challenge, but that's a problem for another day. Today, all we have to worry about is getting the thing down without damaging it. I built the second brace. We got the keel down on its side, and with the help of a couple of guys from the yard, we lifted it up onto a table. And just like that, the keel is completely removed. We can finally inspect the top of it here, and also something that's kind of interesting to see is the amount of adhesive here on the keel that never actually made contact with the hull. All the stuff you're seeing here that has this more tan color has never touched the hull. So I would say from the end of the keel to about here in the top row of adhesive never made contact with the hull. Obviously, the keel never fell off on its own, and we had a pretty hard time removing it, so it was well adhered in place, but yeah, I wasn't expecting to see that. What I was kind of expecting and hoping to see are cracks like these here. This is the top edge of the keel. There's a crack here that's moist, and we also have a big crack here and another crack down here. Of course, we can't say definitively that the water that was inside of the keel actually came from those cracks on the top of the keel, but there are cracks, so getting those fixed sounds like a great idea to me. In case you're curious, this is what the inside of the pocket looks like. It's just a big open space, and I'm glad to see that we didn't do any real serious damage to the pocket while removing the keel. We nicked the gel coat and the fiberglass in a few spots with the sawzall, but this is nothing bad. That's easy to fix. The next step in the repair is going to be to open up the keel so we can get access to all the delicious wet foam that's hiding inside. My plan is to picture frame the keel, meaning cut out a big middle section of the fiberglass skin here. Now, to determine where to cut, I kind of need to know the thickness of the laminate, because when we go to glass this back, I'm going to be sanding or grinding a bevel at roughly 12:1, where I'm going to be laying up glass on either side of that cut. The 12:1 ratio is based on the thickness of the laminate, and well, I don't really know for sure before we open it, but I can get a good indication through the holes we drilled. I would say that the laminate is about 10 millimeters thick. So to make sure I have enough room, I am gonna place the cut about 10 centimeters from the bottom edge. And up here, we're gonna steer clear of the top portion. I really don't want the geometry of that to change. And also by placing the cut below the hull, then if anybody ever needs to do this repair with the keel in place, it would be the exact same procedure, only just with the keel in a different orientation. I scribed a line around 10 centimeters from the edge of the keel all the way around, and then set to work with the oscillating multi-tool. This is a very slow process, but it is a good tool if you want to keep the dust under control. It was surprisingly hard to pry up the outer skin. It turned out there was rolled up pieces of closed cell insulation mat at the bottom of the keel. That stuff was held in place by a single layer of glass draped over it, binding the two halves together. Both the black insulation foam mat and the expanding foam were soaking wet, and the expanding foam had, just as expected, big, giant voids. After cutting another opening further aft on the keel, we found out why there was so much water trapped inside of the keel. There was absolutely no expanding foam at all in the last 1/3 of the keel. I am slightly horrified with what we found inside of the keel. I mean, It still did its job for the first 5 years of the boat's life, but this is a $700,000 or $800,000 boat, so I was expecting just a little bit more attention to detail, to be honest. The only reason I can think of for the rolled up black insulation foam we found here in the bottom of the keel is for flotation, because it's a closed cell foam. But I'm pretty sure the whatever flotation calculation they made for this didn't take into account the fact that there was absolutely no foam in the last 1/2 or 1/3 of the keel. We got most of the wet foam out yesterday. There's still some kind of particle board or some kind of very inferior material in the top of the keel. I'm guessing they used this as a temporary support when they were building the keel, but yeah, it has to come out for sure. So our mission for the rest of the day is to get that stuff dug out. There's a little bit more foam hiding in there also, and then also to get the entire inside sanded so we can give it a nice flush to get rid of the salt water, and then yeah, we can start drying out the keel. Removing the particle board or MDF-like material at the top of the keel turned out to be very time consuming. It just kept crumbling instead of coming out in big chunks. Eventually we got 99% of it removed and was able to give the top a light sanding. I used an oscillating multi-tool to remove the adhesive on the keel. That was, unlike the MDF removal, a very rewarding process. During the adhesive removal, I pushed very lightly with my finger on one of the round cracks on the top of the keel, and presto, I think we've found the source of our leak. There was nothing holding this plug in place besides a super thin layer of gel coat. After that delightful discovery, I donned the personal sweat lodge that is the Tyvek suit and set to work sanding back the gel coat on the top of the keel and also cleaning up the inside of the keel. Alas, my oh glorious grinding fun was cut short by the limitations of a battery-powered angle grinder. In a matter of 20 minutes, I'd burned through the 5 big batteries we had. I am not a fan of battery-powered angle grinders. I'm not 100% done cleaning up, especially the inside of the keel needs some more work, but that battery-powered angle grinder is just not up to the task. We'll have to get our hands on a corded version, especially for when I need to tie in the pieces I've cut out. So yeah, the rest of the cleanup will have to wait. I am 110% sure the leak into our keel was caused by one of these 2 plugs here in the top of the keel. They obviously drilled these holes after they had adhered the 2 shells together, and then they did a really poor job of sealing this up. A single layer of glass covering this would have prevented all of this work. This plug failure is a great example of one of those cases where if somebody had just taken a few extra minutes to do something really easy, in this case just lay up a single layer of glass, it would never have been an issue. It reminds me a lot of the issues I had on Athena with the structural members under the cabin sole, where the plywood core in those structural members was not sealed around the limber holes, so yeah, those were just completely wet and mushy. So yeah, if somebody had just laid up a single layer of glass, we wouldn't have had to do all of this work. You might be wondering why I've taken the keel back to fiberglass here on the top part. Besides us having to lay up a layer of glass to prevent any future leaks from these 2 holes, it's also because of all these little white dots. All these little white dots here are gel coat blisters. Those are typically not a structural issue, but because we are going to be adhering the keel back in place, we're going to have to rely on a solid surface. Any adhesive bond can never be stronger than the quality of its substrate, so if we adhere something on top of these blisters, well, at some point that could turn into a weaker bond. The fix for this is super straightforward. We're just going to lay up a single layer of fiberglass with epoxy over the entire top part here, and we shouldn't have any more issues. Speaking of issues, I'm not terribly impressed with the overall build quality of this Fountaine Pajot keel. We have the gel coat blistering on the keel, we have the leaky plug at the tub, we have the horrible foam job where 1/3 of the keel had no foam and there were big voids in the forward part. And yeah, then we have the whole construction with that rolled up black mat of foam. Seems a little weird. I'm sure there's a great theory behind it, but overall, this keel, not super great in my opinion. Oh yeah, and let's not forget about the adhesive that never made contact with the hull. So this is just a small section of the adhesive that never touched the hull I cut out. So yeah, definitely some issues. We found a bunch of this MDF material inside of the keel. Most likely that was just used during the construction and in no way a part of the structure of the keel. The kind of interesting thing is, so this MDF just falls apart, whereas there were some little pieces of plywood in there. Those held up a lot better. Our plan is to rinse out the keel, so we get rid of all the nasty salt water that was in there, then let it dry for a week or two, and then we can start refoaming, reglassing, and then finally do the reinstallation. It's probably going to take another, well, 2 or 3 weeks. But that leaves Ava and I with a gap of time between then and the boat show in Annapolis. Speaking of the boat show, if you haven't purchased your ticket yet, there's a discount code down in the description. That'll take $5 off of the ticket price, and I think Ava and I will make a couple of bucks if you use that discount code. So if you want to use it, it's down in the description. And if you do end up attending the boat show, it'll be awesome if you stop by the YouTube booth and said hello to Ava and I. Anywho, once the keel is all repaired and reinstalled and the boat is back in the water and it's time for Ava and I to leave Charleston, we'll most likely still have a bit of time in between then and the boat show. And I think we're gonna start traveling a little bit around, maybe searching for a potential upgrade for Athena, something in the 50 to 60 foot range with a center cockpit and a large aft cabin. Now, nothing is set in stone yet. I do miss Oh Glorious DIY work, so it would be cool to get another project boat, but we are in no rush. If we were to start a new refit, I would want it to be a big project, something I can really sink my teeth into and have fun with. So yeah, if you know of a decrepit old boat that's just slowly turning to dust in some field somewhere that might be of interest, go ahead and let us know. I'll include my email down in the description. In next week's video, we will go ahead and calculate how much expanding foam, how much fiberglass, how much epoxy and fairing compound we need so we can put in an order with the total boat. And then I think we might want to also just show you the inside of this boat because, well, we haven't really been inside of the boat yet. I'll end this week's video here and I hope to see all of you guys back here in the yard next week for yet more Oh Glorious DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!